Hello, welcome to Financial Insider Weekly. I'm your host, Michael Gray, CPA. My guest today is Peggy Martin. And Peggy is a fee-compensated financial planner with the Family Wealth Consulting Group. And the Family Wealth Consulting Group is a partnership of Peggy and her husband, Craig. She has more than 34 years of experience in the financial services industry. She started when she was 6 years old.
Yes, indeed.
And Peggy assists clients with family wealth planning, including legacy, financial, estate, investment, and insurance planning. And her credentials include Master of Science in Financial Services, Chartered Financial Consultant, Chartered Life Underwriter, a Fellow in Life Management Institute, and Chartered Advisor for Senior Living. Today, Peggy and I are going to be talking about socially responsible and sustainable investing. And Peggy, thank you for joining me today.
Mike, as always, it's a pleasure to be here, and in particular at this time of the year.
Right.
Very much enjoy it.
So you know, folks, today is November 24th, so we're right in front of Thanksgiving here. So Peggy, I appreciate you making the time to come down. Okay. So there's been some buzz, some talk, I guess for a while now, about socially responsible and sustainable investing. And so maybe you can tell us a little bit about your experience with your clients' interest in this and why you think this is happening.
Be glad to. If people have a concern about what kind of companies they're investing in, and if it's important to protect the environment for the future, socially responsible and sustainable investing might be something that they would like to do. It also tends to tie in with legacy planning when I'm working with clients about what's been important to them, and they want to share that, and they want to share that with their children and other people that have been important to them. I find there's a connection between the socially responsible and sustainable investing and legacy planning.
Okay.
They seem to go together. Personal values investing is another way to refer to socially responsible and sustainable investing. Also, so is community investing, ethical investing. There are a lot of different terms out there right now that are relating back to doing well while doing good. Yeah. So it just depends what your emphasis might want to be. A local bank, but you want to call it community investing, that they're helping local nonprofits or local businesses get established. So they may use the word community investing versus socially responsible or personal values. Somebody who is very much into creating their own family foundation and want to invest accordingly may call it personal values. So it just depends on what the tilt is for the person. Okay. Sustainable investing is related to socially responsible investing, but typically it's more on the environmental side. Socially responsible is more on the humanity side. Employment practices, especially when you're working with emerging market countries, want to make sure what are their employment practices, how are they treating young children, what are the hours that people are working, without treading on the culture of that society.
Yeah. Some of those choices are hard because some companies are providing employment for people that might otherwise be starving, and so maybe they'd rather have something that in some ways to us doesn't seem acceptable.
That is correct. Yeah. You need to be careful with the screening that is done, that we're screening based on humanity, but not treading on their culture from the standpoint of, well, do they need their children to be working? Do they need the whole family to be working to create their environment? We're used to our environment here, and theirs may be very different.
Right. So how significant has this whole thing of socially responsible and sustainable investing, how has it been as a growth area in the investment field?
Well, I have quite a few statistics here, which I'm actually going to read so that I get them correct. Okay. And I have spent some time looking at the U.S. Social Investment Forum's report from 2014. There is an updated report now. And providing values at the end of 2013. And it's really amazing, $6.57 trillion in socially responsible, sustainable. And it has had a growth of more than 76%, increasing from 3.74 trillion in 2012. That's a significant shift. So that's saying that a lot of people are looking at this type of investing, that they're interested in it. In particular, I hear a lot about the environment.
Yeah.
I want to protect the environment. How can the environment be here for my future generations, for my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and beyond? And according again to this report, that more than 1 out of every $6 now under professional management is invested in socially responsible here in the United States. So 18% of the $36.8 trillion that is invested is now going towards the social and sustainable type investments that are available. So that's quite a significant increase. Right. And I will say I do get more questions about it now than I have previously, that people are interested, or they'll say, do you do this? Because it may not be something that comes up unless they ask the question. However, in my interviewing process with my clients, when they talk about working a lot with the nonprofit community, I usually bring it up because they're telling me that they're community oriented and that is something that's extremely important to them.
Yes.
So I bring it up.
Oh, good. Okay.
Also, in the mutual fund area, it's pretty interesting. In a Trends report that came out in 2014, there are now 415 mutual funds that are in this category, up from 333 in 2012. But get this, in 2001 there were only 167.
Yeah.
So that's up 60%.
Yeah.
In a 13-year time frame, it's gone up 60%. So again, it's just saying that community is interested in this. People are interested in it.
Right, and that people are sensitive enough. The fund companies, like the Fidelities and the others that people are asking them for this, and so they're providing it for them.
They're creating it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. What are some of the individual industries that people have been interested in for this type of investing?
Well, you could talk about on the environmental side, alternative energy. As we've talked about before, the more and more hybrid type vehicles or totally electric vehicles at some point. Safe water, agriculture. There's a lot of funds that are available now, even some alternatives that are starting to come up to the surface as the environment becomes more and more important to people. There's a huge concern about, our drought is another part of the environment. How do we overcome that? And if California actually burns up, how do we overcome that?
That's kind of
So it's more important all the time. So I see a lot of people talking about the environment and the agriculture and how can we best use our water supply so that we can continue to be able to do and sustain lifestyle throughout the generations.
Right.
Another thing that it comes into this is that a lot of companies now have what they call shareholder advocacy, whether they are a company that is producing like pharmaceuticals. That's something that socially responsible investing looks at very closely. What is the pharmaceutical doing? In particular with regard to contraception, which is a big issue. It's a hot button. So that does eliminate some people from wanting to invest in socially responsible because of that limitation. You're not investing in companies that their primary purpose is the contraception or abortion practices.
Yeah. And
so
how do you segregate that from something? Because for some purposes, that's very important.
It becomes it can become a very controversial area.
Yes, I know.
In this form of investing, I'll have some people that will do the sustainable investing but decline to do the socially responsible because of that. But if you look at socially responsible under the total umbrella, they're helping humanity.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the goal. So looking at it from a life-sustaining perspective. So they're helping with the child labor laws, all the employment laws. Also, companies that their sole purpose is to create weapons.
Yeah.
Is not
That
socially responsible.
That will be screened out.
That would be screened out, exactly. Exactly. But other places that are using this, again, this kind of investment philosophy, again, a lot of nonprofits are switching over to socially responsible and sustainable because it's more in alignment with their mission statements.
Well, and they're getting pressure. So, for example, Stanford University, and I would think UC Berkeley, I mean, so they have big endowment funds.
Right.
And so their students are very concerned about how they're investing those funds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's coming up more and more as a point of conversation. There's also hospitals and medical schools that they may be more into, at least into the sustainable area. Again, private foundations or public foundations, but private foundations, a lot of folks are doing this. Religious institutions, absolutely, are very much into both the socially responsible and the sustainable.
And we've got the conflict again.
There's the conflict again, yes, exactly. So it's not for everybody, but it's for a lot of people.
Okay. So how do the fund managers screen these investments?
Well, we've talked a little bit about that, but again, and I'm going to read this because it's critical to quote it correctly, that under socially responsible, earn at least 20% of their total business revenue through the production and or sale of military weapons. So if more than 20%, it most likely will get screened out. Engage in certain for-profit business activities in or with the Republic of Sudan. So there's some countries and areas that they're not going to even go into because it's not meeting the criteria. Earn at least 15% of their total business revenue through production and or sale of tobacco or alcohol products. 20% of their business revenue from gambling activities, again, directly participating in abortions. The manufacture of pharmaceuticals, abortive agents, or contraception. Stem cell research, again, that's another very volatile area. You know, that in some of these funds, they eliminate that. They screen it away.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So on the one hand, I mean, that's how probably most of the biggest advances are going to come in medicine.
Correct.
And yet that's not acceptable for many people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And earn at least 15% of their total business revenue from pornographic sales.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And that makes sense that would be screened out.
Okay.
And, you know, here's another one that gets a little bit more controversial, are for-profit healthcare providers. So typically the socially responsible funds are going to be working with a nonprofit healthcare providers, like a hospice type facility that's a nonprofit facility. That would be an example. And have major controversies relating to child labor issues. So those are the screening mechanisms for the socially responsible side. On the sustainable side, again, it's looking more for environmental, which is going to be to reduce resource consumption, reduce emissions of toxins, implement proactive environmental management systems and initiatives, and help the customers to achieve sustainability. Now that one is a little open-ended. How are you helping to create sustainability? But it's one of the screening factors that they look at. So however that screening is done, I haven't personally been involved with the actual screening. I do know that the funds that we work with, which are through Dimensional, which are low-cost institutional mutual funds, that they have a third-party outside independent screening company that comes in to do the screening for their funds, which I think most of the funds do because you want it to be an arm's length transaction. You're not giving the guidance on how to do the screening as the mutual fund company. The screening companies are doing that guidance.
Okay, so so part of, I think, what someone that wants to do this might be probably should do is look at the prospectus and so forth to see how this is being screened and whether it's something that's sort of consistent with maybe their values and so forth.
Yes, usually right in the prospectus, there's a couple of pages in there that will absolutely explain what the screening process is, who is currently being used to screen the fund, and what their procedures are. It's about 2 pages long in the prospectus that I have seen for the mutual funds that we're working with. And it spells it out very clearly. And I will also give credit to the marketing materials because basically they copy the prospectus. And I think it's because they want people to understand how the screening is working. So there's no question that the individual considering purchasing these funds, what's being screened out.
Yeah.
That, 5 years down the line, they can't say, I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
All right. So, if you look at traditional investment philosophy and so forth, usually they say, you want to have the universe, you're holding all of the stocks in the marketplace and so
Correct.
forth, worldwide, and making all these asset classes and other things. Now here we're saying that we're going to reduce our universe somewhat.
Correct.
As far as what we're doing. So how has that impacted the returns for your clients and your approach in putting together their portfolios?
Well, what I do is a hybrid combination for our socially responsible, sustainable clients. And currently we have available to us a U.S. Social Core Fund, a U.S. Sustainable Core Fund, international, the same thing, and emerging markets, we've got a socially responsible fund. So we're basically buying the global marketplace, which is our philosophy, to absolutely buy the global marketplace. And you want to buy that marketplace and hold on to it. We also do, though, with complete disclosure to our clients, we do add 2 other mutual funds that we believe help to balance out the total portfolio. We do put in a small cap, U.S. small cap mutual fund, and an international small cap fund that is not socially responsible or sustainable. Under our mutual fund company, currently that is not available. I believe at some point it will be. But right now we want to make sure that we're following our methodology, that we're not compromising that. But on the same hand, we're also giving our clients the opportunity to do the socially responsible and sustainable. Now, I did have one person come back and say, I will sacrifice not having those 2 funds because I do not want those 2 funds. I want to stay with the total socially responsible and sustainable. So at the end of the whole interview process and explaining the upside potential of how the total portfolio could work together and the downside potential of not having those 2 asset classes, the U.S. small and the international small. If the client is convinced that that is what they want to do, we work with that and help them to understand as we go through the review of their portfolio each quarter what we see as how they are not in total alignment with the global marketplace.
And how has the returns and so forth been comparing for your clients?
So far, they're running right at the same level as the other funds that we provide to our clients. I have not seen a shift in returns. So that tells me that the screening is done quite well and that the companies that DFA has picked to begin with are good, solid companies.
Okay.
And matching the criteria of, again, what the screeners are looking for.
Okay.
So, the other thing, though, to go back a little bit is I'm quite a reader of different sources of how can we work with the legacy going from one generation to the next generation.
Right.
And what I'm seeing in a lot of the big corporations now is statements by the shareholders saying they do want to do good. They do want to be a good corporate citizen. And that's all part of this socially responsible message. Is it needs to come from the top.
Yeah.
The top needs to buy into it as well. And also, when working so much with the local community that I live in, it is just really great to see, in particular, a lot of the maybe smaller banks where the name recognition is not quite so large as it is with some of the bigger banks, how closely they do work with the local community. And they really care about promoting local businesses and working with the local nonprofit. They show up to events. There's a sense of great caring, and I think it's a wonderful way to help promote growth while doing good.
I hate to be a little cynical, but anyway, it's great until they get acquired by Wells Fargo or something.
Well, that could happen. That could happen, but then there'll be something else to replace that. And also, some of the bigger banks now are also doing the same thing. They're actually out working with the local branches, are working with the local community, which, again, I find to be just great that they have a presence there, that they say they care.
Yeah, no, it is a good thing, and it's great that many companies are promoting community involvement by their employees by sponsoring or promoting certain events. I think Martin Luther King Day is a sort of a traditional community service day for many companies.
Right.
So they're sort of giving their employees this day to go out and be involved in some sort of community service project or whatever. And we should encourage that sort of activity. So we have about 5 minutes left here, Peggy.
So we need to chit chat about the socially responsible. I guess the big thing that today, when I was preparing to talk with you, it was really a pleasing surprise to see how much of an increase there had been.
Yeah, it's just dramatic, how this thing has grown over the few years, because you and I have sort of exchanged information in some of the books and so forth where people are talking about this as a movement. And of course, my experience is that my wife has gotten involved in this.
Correct.
That she wanted to basically says, I don't want to be an investment program, and yet, I'm supporting companies that are selling tobacco and creating, warfare weapons and all that stuff.
Correct. It's how each individual defines the word creating harm or creating an unsustainable environment, and that's different for each individual. So for what works for one person may not work for another person. So that's why this is not for everybody, but it's for the folks that, if they feel that they don't want to be investing in something where young children can help promote smoking, or can help promote drinking, or can help promote the selling of weapons, or whatever. If people, it's their personal values. That's why I like the phraseology personal values, because it's what's important to you. It's what matters to you. And again, it's not what matters to your next door neighbor or even to another family member. It's just how do you want to invest your dollars?
Yeah. Now, there are some people that believe in buying, say, a few shares of Standard Oil or whatever, because it provides a means for them to, if you will, have some corporate activism, to attend shareholder meetings and to voice their concerns about, some of the things that they see that they don't feel are right that the company is doing.
Well, and again, that's another tilt to the socially responsible concept or sustainable. Again, it depends on how you're defining it. I did actually have somebody who is very much an activist that said, no, I'm going to invest traditional, because she said, I want to be able to speak up when I don't like something. If I don't have skin in the game, if I'm not investing that way, I can't do that. So this is really very personal. It's how it works for you.
Right. can you talk maybe for a moment? Is there maybe a particular case study? We only have a couple of minutes, so but
Okay.
or anyway, just a thought or whatever along this thing, this area of socially responsible.
I think if you believe that you're interested in socially responsible, it's very wise to reach out to a professional that has some knowledge about it so that you understand what is available and how the funds are screened so you know exactly what you're investing in and what you're not investing in. And as always, I think before entering any kind of an investment program, a hired professional needs to review with you all of your economic well-being so that you understand what you're doing with your total wealth, your total economic wealth. Doing anything in isolation just because it sounds good may not be in your best interest. In all likelihood, it won't be in your best interest.
So just picking up the whatever it is, the Money Magazine annual report of mutual funds and looking in the socially responsible section, that's probably not the best way to go through and pick these.
I am always an advocate of hiring the professional. I believe that we have a great place in this world to help others and to help people make wise choices and not do that in isolation.
Okay. Peggy, I want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
And hope you all have a great Thanksgiving. Folks will probably be watching this in January, but anyway.
Hey, that's fun though. They'll be able to know it took place at Thanksgiving time. You and your family have a great Thanksgiving as well.
Okay. All right, folks. Hope we've given you some things to think about in the area of socially responsible and sustainable investing. See you next time on Financial Insider Weekly.